Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2378. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Charleston, South Carolina with a very special, he's a returning guest, but we'll explain the name change in a minute. Ryan Remington. Ryan, welcome back to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear? And are you ready to release the clutch?
I'm ready to roll.
All right. So good to have you back. Longtime listeners will remember Ryan as Ryan Toth. Now, he was a guest back in June of 2017. A lot's happened in the world since 2017. Some of it not so much fun, but in your world, a lot of improvements, a lot of changes. So I always like having guests back that have expanded and broadened their horizons and built their businesses. You were guest number 787 back then. You're number 2387. There's some sevens all tied in here. But how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. It's fantastic being back. It's great to chat with you again. And, just really excited to share, how the business has grown over the last few years.
It's tremendous. I'm really, my hat's off to you. I always ask my guests, and I may have asked you this before, to share one little thing that most people don't know about you. But what I want to do here is have you explain the name change, because you were Ryan Toth. You work at a company, you're Elliott Remington. So there's an Elliott, there's a Ryan, there's a Toth, there's all these different things going on. So you got to explain a little bit about the rebranding that you did, why, and what's going on with all this.
Who is this mysterious person?
Yes, the mystery man.
Yes. So really nothing has changed me personally. I'll go ahead and just share why I chose Elliott Remington as a name. So at one point, the last time we spoke, we were doing high-end car sales consulting for clients. And I ended up in London at Simon Furlonger Fine Cars looking at an F40. And I recall that as a great experience because the whole place was so professional, but it was also very low key and just nonchalant about things, right? And they're British, so they're wearing their tweed jackets and their jeans, and it was just all very nice. And it was just Simon Furlonger Fine Cars. And when I was sat down and started thinking about my business, I didn't want it to be Ryan's car storage or something like that, right? I wanted it to be a little bit more just something that caught your attention. So long story short, Remington is my middle name. I share that with my father and my oldest son. So there's a little bit of a family thing. And Elliott was a gentleman that at one point I had given up on the entire process. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to pursue the business anymore. And I met Elliott quite randomly, and he suggested I pursue things again. He got me back on board, and I really liked the roll of the tongue, Elliott Remington.
Sounds very James Bondish almost, Yeah,
it does. It has that little bit of appeal. And so at one point, we used to be Elliott Remington Motorsport Classics and Concierge. Which was not only a lot to say on the phone, but it was really tough to fit on a business card.
I was going to say, there's a long line. Yeah.
Right. I was getting tired of paying for all those extra letters.
There you go.
So at one point, I rebranded and we changed our logo and we became Elliott Remington Auto Studio. And that was the point where I said to myself, you know what, let me adjust, how I promote myself and connection to the business. So I decided that I'll just use Ryan Remington and get away from all those really confusing conversations about who are you and why do you belong in this place.
It makes sense. And sometimes that's a good thing to do in business is kind of sit back, because when you start a business, you have one focus, one way direction you're going, and things change. And in many ways, you start to learn over time, with the confusion of the name, people. And last thing you want to do is confuse people, right? You want them to know exactly who you are, what you're doing. So I think it's wonderful. I love Ryan Remington, another great name, Elliott Remington. I mean, all this works really cool. So let me give you a new introduction here to listeners who've come on board since you were last on the show. But I'll remind our listeners, you can listen to all the past guests on Cars Yeah on the Cars Yeah website. Everybody's there. So here we go. Ryan Remington is the founder and managing director at Elliott Remington Auto Studio. Motivated by a lack of automotive care options, connections in the Charleston market and a desire to do something different, Ryan opened Elliott Remington in March of 2017. What started out as a concept to provide a DIY working space and equipment to auto enthusiasts, the plan quickly became something much larger. At Elliott Remington, they offer premium automotive detailing, quality asset management, storage, paint preservation, paint restorations, and paint protection with ceramic coatings and film and window tintings. Originally from West Point, New York, Ryan grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland. We'll be back in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors, so give them a little love, and we'll be right back. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Did you know that Cars Yeah! Is in the top 1% of all podcasts based on listenership according to Libsyn, the premier RSS feed for podcasts in the United States? That's right. Plus, DuPont Registry recommended Cars Yeah! Is one of their top 10 car podcasts for you to enjoy. Cars Yeah! Has experienced tremendous growth, plus your ads are evergreen, meaning they never go away. And more listeners find Cars Yeah! Every day for their daily dose of automotive inspiration. Do you want to expose your brand to a highly targeted list of automotive enthusiasts in a very unique and very personal way? Well, I can help you. Contact me, Mark Green, at mark@carsyeah.com or through the website at carsyeah.com today to learn more. So, Elliott, since you were last on the show, things have grown, things have expanded. We went through a little thing called COVID. Oh my gosh. That was a challenge. Thank goodness that's way in the rearview mirror. Let's keep it way back down the road, okay? But let's talk a little bit about what your business is doing these days, because you provide a variety of very high-end services that go well beyond simply detailing a car. So walk us through all the things that Elliott Remington Auto Studio offers.
Yeah, so we traditionally are a climate-controlled automotive storage facility, right? That's our primary business. But shortly after we spoke in June of 2017, I had these cars that were sitting in a warehouse, and I started to ask myself, well, how can we just offer more, right? What can we do to better care for these cars? And the simple question or answer was, well, we can start offering some detailing services. And, I had a detailing background to an extent. So I says, well, let's go do this. And the one thing I do have is just an obsession for doing things as well as possible. And that just spurned this whole entire detailing side, which now has become really top quality paint preservation, paint protection. We're doing, wet sanding and paint corrections. We're providing window film and paint protection film, ceramic coatings. And soon I'm really excited to announce we'll also be, I think, the first shop in all of South Carolina, definitely Charleston, to offer dry ice detailing.
Oh, yeah, that is a very cool process. I've seen videos of that, and being a guy that loves to keep cars clean, it's kind of magic. And who was I talking to? Bruce Canepa. Who has quite a wonderful restoration shop, and they had started using that. And I want you to explain what it is, because the fact that you can use it on almost any surface and not damage even rubber surfaces, it's magic stuff.
Yeah, it's really quite brilliant, right? And essentially, you're using the dry ice as a non-abrasive way to clean your vehicle, right? And especially the undercarriage and the engine bay have some sensitive potential electronics or some sensitive equipment. A lot of the guys that are using the dry ice, or the clients that come for dry ice cleaning, they're concerned about factory markings and losing those, or those being removed. And dry ice, if done properly, disclaimer here, you could absolutely damage your car very quickly with dry ice. So obviously, if you want to work with a professional on that, but having said that, you can safely clean almost any surface, the exterior, the interior, the engine bay. It is really quite a revolutionary sort of service that seems like it should have been around for forever.
Well, yeah. Well, explain a little bit how it works, because when people first hear it, they go, dry ice. That's the stuff that my fish from Alaska comes packed in, so it's still fresh. And don't touch it, because it'll burn the heck out of your fingers. But it's fun to put in a glass of water and show the kids how it bubbles and boils, But how exactly does the process work?
So we have these, essentially pellets or high density beads that are shot out of this machinery that we use. And just that process alone, the chemical reaction, changing from the solid to the gas is what does the cleaning. Right. Yeah. It's just really, really interesting. It's super satisfying to watch. There's some videos out on YouTube. You can definitely get lost in those for a few hours.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you think about sandblasting, for example. And if anyone's ever used a blast booth to clean off old paint and surfaces, it is really satisfying. It's like pressure washing your deck or your driveway. Guys like you and me and other people go, you find that satisfying? But those of us who are car fanatics, yeah, we love making things better. But this is different, because you certainly, like you said, on many surfaces, don't want to use sandblasting. You can do that with walnut. You can do it with glass beads. You can do it with sand, but that can hurt things. This is different if done right.
Yeah, it's very safe. And, like I said, you get all the benefits of that blast without the damaging effects.
Yeah, and it makes the underside of your car look so new. And, I've had cars in the past that they come with Cosmoline on them. And these are collector cars where that Cosmoline's been on there for decades. And trying to get it off, it's really difficult to get off and not damage the surfaces underneath your car. So I'm excited that you're offering that. And what are some of the other things that you do besides, when I say simple detailing is a very broad term, but you guys take this to an entirely new level.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we don't want people to think that we're only out here doing, super high-end cars, and because you see regular cars all the time. But we do look at detailing a little bit different, right? People will call us and they'll ask for a quote of, oh, can I have my car detailed? Well, what does that exactly mean to you? Right? What does detailing mean to you? For me, it could mean dry ice detailing. For you, it could just mean a wash and a wax, right? And there's a lot of variation. So we really take a lot of time to understand, what is this car to you? What do you use the car for? What are you expecting out of these results? And develop plans that are designed more with the customer in mind and the vehicle's long-term protection in mind, right? So for instance, we've got a BMW X7 in today, that'll have a full front paint protection film installed. We'll do some window tint, and then we'll probably end up with a coating, right? That might be a very different process and conversation. It's a daily driver. It's going to be on highways. We're going to look to preserve the car in a salt environment over time. So that might be different than a vintage car that we're preparing for, say, the Hilton Head Island Concours,
Sure.
Right? So we'll approach a car differently. We'll look at the paint differently. Obviously, now this car, we want to win awards, right? So what are we doing differently here, right? So it's all about that individual approach. I really do not like packages and bundling people into things, because ultimately, if you and I bought a car today, same car, 0 miles, and we drove it for a week, your car and my car would look absolutely different by the end of that week, right? We're different people. We have different styles. So to bundle everybody into these detail packages, it really doesn't make sense, right? So, and that's kind of the approach we take with everything, right? And it's part of the reason why Elliott Remington, has a slogan, decidedly different. Go out there and we make conscious choices to separate ourselves from, other detailers out there.
Well, I think it's important. I did something I'd never done before. As you know, I come from car care world. For decades, I worked in a business where we developed car care solutions for people, everything from polishes to waxes, random orbitals, do-it-yourselfers primarily were buying our products. So I really started to learn all that. I had a detailing business from the time I was 14 years old. Back in those days, it was very different. It was all done by hand. But one of the things I did differently was last year, I took it to Joe Kimball, who's been a guest on the show. It's a local shop. I've never let anybody touch my cars because I'm very, very picky. Not that people can't do a better job than me, but that's just who I am. But for the first time, I handed my keys to somebody and I said, okay, and I tested him on my wife's car. Her car just turned 19 years old. It's a X5 we bought new, but it looks brand new. But when Joe was done with it, what he did was he did a paint correction, 2-stage polish. Didn't have to wet sand it because it had factory paint, never been damaged. But he did a 2-stage polish, and then he did a 2-stage ceramic coating. I wish I had done this a long time ago. And I'm going to give you a great plug here. I mean, you listeners out there, if you've not done this, it will save so much time in your life, and your car will look so good. And as you know, I mean, you figure my wife's car, and I had him do my M3. I've got a 19-year-old or 17-year-old E46 M3. Again, less miles, but still looks just as good. And these cars came back, they looked different. They really did. And I thought they were looking, they looked good to begin with, but they had a glow about them. So I'd love to hear your opinion of paint correction from polish standpoint. Wet sanding, of course, that's a different process, but maybe walk us through what those two things mean. And then this ceramic coating stuff, because this makes cleaning my car so easy now. It's just incredible.
Yeah. So, we do a lot of ceramic coatings and we also maintain those coatings. And it's always fun to get a car that's been coated in because it cuts our labor time in half. It's so easy to clean off. And, I'll go into the technology in that in a second. But the prep work really is what matters. And to your point, there's polishing and there's paint corrections, and sometimes you'll get compounding and, all sorts of these terms thrown in there, buffing and right. And, whenever I hear that sort of conversation on a phone call, I kind of know, okay, here we go. There's some education, right? So yeah. I hold paint correction and I hold polishing in two separate categories. Paint correction for me is really the removing defects and really looking to get the best, if you will, show quality shine. Think of it as like a sick visit to the doctor, right? Like yeah. Where we're here to address. Whereas a polish is more of an enhancement service, right? That's going to bring out shine and brightness, and it'll remove some minor defects, right? But it's more of like your annual exam. And then wet sanding is a visit to the emergency room, right? That's where
yeah. And you better have somebody who knows what they're doing do that, because otherwise, wet sanding can get even polishing and buffing. If you're using compounds that are too aggressive, you can damage paint, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it used to be more common because a lot of folks were using rotary tools and different pad combinations, and really the technology today it's become really easy for even the DIY person to pick up the pads and work on their car to an extent. Having said that, there's always risk, right? You could always burn your paint if you're too high on the temperature, you're too high on the pressure, you're too aggressive with the compounds, right? So there's that, right? And there's a lot of variables that go into it. Ultimately, again, it's about the car. How long have you had the car? Has someone polished on this car prior? Has this car been paint corrected? Has it been painted, right? And that can change a lot of things in the way we approach a car, right? So again, while I appreciate the DIY folks, if you're really looking to get your car, as tight as possible and looking great, definitely reach out to professionals and learn about the shop that you're working with, right? Are they measuring the paint before they touch a car?
I was going to ask that if you use paint gauges, because great shops will do that, because you can figure, even somebody who has a car that they they don't know if it's been damaged and repainted. Maybe a shop did a great job, and then they do a paint meter test and they go, this back fender has more paint on it than the rest of the car. It must have been, well, no, this car's never been damaged. Well, maybe it was fixed at the dealer before it was even sold, or at the factory.
Yeah. And we know that with especially, some of the older paint jobs that are, from factories, some of them were hand painted. Right. So there's a variance, right, between, Joe on the line and Ryan on the line, right? Like they're painting different cars essentially. Right. So we see that already. Right. And, just taking the time to understand, the car. And again, for the guy that has the X7 that's daily driving every day to work, does he need a paint correction that's going to, potentially reduce the longevity of his paint over time? Maybe not.
Yeah, probably not.
Let's focus on a polish, and then we spend that other money elsewhere on things that are protecting, right? And that's where those ceramic coatings can come into play because, if you do a polish or you do a paint correction, well, you don't want to undo your work in a couple of weeks or, a month or so. Let's put a ceramic coating on there. Let's get the paint looking really, really great, right? Bring out all that shine, bring out the depth in it, and then put a coating on there, which is just going to enhance everything that's there. Right? Unfortunately, what is also negatively there can be enhanced as well, right? So it's a two-edged sword.
Yeah, my cars, when I bought them, and again, this is the 18 and 19-year-old cars. I had put the 3M back in the day. That was the premier 3M paint protection film. Since then, there's all these other companies that have come out. Expel, I've had the president of that company on the show, and many others. Really nice products. But that product, I had those on those cars for that long. And they were starting to show their age a little bit. And even the guys who took them off said, I can't believe this has been on this long and looks this good. Well, I used to polish it and wax it. So, and I'm a nutcase, and my cars were always covered. But it was a pain in the butt to take that off for them because it just cracked into 1,000 pieces. But they did it. But it was amazing what was underneath the car that had been protected all these years. So, you have a car that's 19 years old with no paint chips on the front from just normal driving. People even today look at both my cars and go, I can't believe these. My wife's car got 166,000 miles on it and looks brand new. So there's a lot you can do to maintain these things and make them look good. And explain to our listeners a little bit about this ceramic, because I tell people I've done this and they go, yeah, but I like to wax my car. And I said, well, that's fine. Keep waxing it. But if you don't want to spend your time that way anymore, this is a wonderful option.
Yeah. So ceramics have become probably the most popular service, at least in our shop, that we get requested for, right? So they've gained a lot of traction over the last few years. In fact, when we first chatted, I think that was right around the time where they're really gaining popularity.
Sure.
And now I think they're just so common. So the difference really, wax, carnauba wax, right, is a natural product and it's going to begin to break down almost immediately, right? So, can you protect a car over the course of a year through waxing only? Absolutely, right? You're going to put in a lot more effort, though, your best results. Now, ceramic, on the other hand, the way that the technology works is essentially paint has these dips and waves in it. So what the ceramic does is at a molecular level, almost in little like beads, if you will, fills in those little gaps and gives it more even surface. So what does that do is that it changes the
light refraction nature of it. Yeah.
And how water is repelled from it and, all these things, in addition to providing a sacrificial layer above your paint's clear coat system. So that's where it comes in. And now even we have a new ceramic product. It's called Ion that we're selling, which is really, really interesting. And what it does is the users, I guess the listeners can't see what I'm doing with my hands.
Yeah.
There's these larger beads that sit down on the paint. And then we have the top coat, which is a smaller set of beads that kind of shuffles in to these larger beads. So imagine if you had a vase and you put some rocks in it and you came back and you put some smaller rocks in it, you came back, put some more, and then eventually you had some sand. That's sort of the bonding that the technology is doing.
Very cool.
Putting in all these spaces, and it creates just a stronger, more durable bond that's going to be better over time.
Yeah, I tell people, it may sound a little pricey at first, but the amount of time it has saved me in the last year, because I like to keep my cars clean. I live where it rains a lot in the wintertime.
Right.
Not like unlike where you grew up in Scotland, rain a little bit there, right?
Yeah.
Just part of the nature. But it just makes, even driving the car in the rain, it's like the water just like flies off of it. It's just, not to say it doesn't get dirty, but still. It's changed my world. I mean, I don't even use a towel on my cars anymore, really. I just blow them off after I wash them with an air blower.
And that's the beauty of the ceramic coatings, right? Is because now it's harder for contaminants to bond to the surface, right? And then what is left over, you're almost rinsing it away. Right, you wash your car, you rinse it away, and then you just blow dry it. So what does it mean? You're touching your paint less, right? Every time you touch your paint, you have your opportunity for micro scratching, right? Sure. So the less you touch your paint, you're not drying it with towels anymore. You can just blow dry it, maybe touch up here or there. So you're going to the longevity of it. And we can coat our paint protection film, and in fact we do. And some of our paint protection film comes ceramic coated as well. So there's definitely lots of options for it. And if anybody is listening and they're a little bit unsure, stop by your local detailer. Again, do your research, check them out. Stop by, meet the team, and then ask them, hey, what do your entry-level ceramic coatings look like? What could we do? I'm sure they have a 6-month option. That's a little bit of a teaser. It's not going to be too expensive. And I'm pretty confident, even if you test it on your windshield, for a few weeks, shortly afterwards, you're going to be wondering, you're going to say to yourself, this is pretty neat.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you something interesting that happened. My wife knows I'm a nutcase, but I've taken care of her car all these years. We made a deal when we got married. I don't have to do laundry, and she always has a clean car. So in 30 years of marriage, well, actually, we're coming up on 40. Holy cow. How did that happen? I haven't had to do laundry once, which is a sweet deal, but her car is always clean. I always know when I'm running out of underwear. I better get out there and wash her car. But they were redoing our streets around here. And she came in, she goes, I'm really sorry. I couldn't avoid it. They just laid some oil down, on this street. I think it got on the car. And I went out, and sure enough, it had splattered up on the side. But I tell you, it just wiped right off. And the other thing are that we have a lot of fir trees here that drop sap certain times of the year. And you get these little tiny beads of sap all over your car. It's like a pimply faced teenager. And sometimes you don't see them except through your windshield. But when you rub your hand, you go, oh my gosh, it just comes right off. So, it's a wonderful way to go. Well, enough about that. Back to what you're doing. The other thing that you do in your shop is you supply a service where you store people's vehicles. Probably mostly people that have run out of garage space or during the wintertime. So you do that as well, right?
Yeah, so it's a big part of our business. Right now, we care for roughly 65 cars.
Wow, that's a lot of cars.
It is. So yeah, we have climate controlled storage in Charleston. It's unique because I don't know if you've ever been to Charleston. You'll know high tide and a summer thunderstorm, and downtown is flooded 2 to 3 feet of water.
And that's got some salt in it, right?
Yeah, and it's all salt water, right? And we have some great beaches that people want to live by and enjoy, fantastic vehicles. And a lot of the municipalities around here do not allow for, especially beachfront homes to be totally enclosed simply due to the hurricane-like blow-through requirements that they need, right, for the garages. So we're a great option for what is an interesting geographic environment. Vehicles come in, we care for them, whether they're a, family car that's been passed down for a few years or, smaller collections. People, I've got one gentleman, I think he's on his 15th 911.
Yeah, sounds like me. Yeah.
Or even, folks that in Charleston is different. People leave this here for the summer since it's so hot and humid, and they come back in the fall and winter. So we'll see a lot of, daily drivers come in during the summer, folks that live downtown, and they really don't want the hassle of worrying about what happens if a storm does come through to Charleston. They know Elliott Remington has it. It's taken care of. It's secure. We do, maintenance drives. A little bit of a little circle that we have. We'll drive the car down, exercise it. Obviously, it's helping the battery, keeping the tires fresh. But we also do a lot of little things. Service concierge, we'll look at dealership appointments and just making sure everything is taken care of, deliveries, you name it, really. We want our clients to enjoy their cars. That's the whole point. Everybody knows how frustrating it is to finally have a nice Saturday morning. Your schedule is cleared. There's nothing to do on the honey to-do list. Oh, great. Let's go for a drive, and then get out to the garage and nothing.
Battery's dead, or the tires are underinflated, or there's a leak. Yeah.
Yeah. End up spending the weekend banging tools around in the garage and, frustrated. So our thing is, I want you to enjoy your car when you're ready to enjoy it. And you call us and we'll get it prepped and it'll be ready for you, and go have fun.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, I think it's tremendous how you've scaled your business. It's a great testament to sitting back and looking at whatever business you have and saying, how can we expand services to our clients that they have a need for, that relate to what we're doing? And you've fallen right into that category. Since we last talked, I do like to ask about great books. Is there a great book you might be able to reference or share with our listeners?
So recently I've been, I don't know if these are just, I feel like they're more like life manuals as opposed to.
That's a good thing to have.
So I've been back and forth between Think and Grow Rich and 7 Habits. I think both of those they're relative to each other.
Yeah.
But really it's about your mindset and how you look at life. It's funny because in our sheet here, you talk about challenges. This last 5 years has undoubtedly been challenging. In the end of the day, what I've taken from everything that's come our way, and in fact, just this week has been a nightmare. But nonetheless, we've gotten through it before. We'll get through it again. And, it's just about staying positive and looking at anytime a challenge comes up here, what is the lesson I can pull away from this? And how do we avoid these missteps in the future? And then what do we do next? So I think those two books are really kind of in sync with where my head is at right now.
Yeah, they're two of my favorites. And the 7 Habits book, well, both of those are things that I read long time ago, share with my kids, share with many, many people. They're great books to go back to every year and just readdress things and think about how can I apply these things. And a lot of times you read things out of those two books and say, oh yeah, okay, that relates to this. This is how I can improve and do much better. So since we've talked a lot about your business here, I'm going to talk a little bit about you and ask you if I could send you on the ultimate drive, tell you, hey, I'm going to give you a break, a week off. I'm going to park any car in your garage. You can take it for a drive, take anybody you want with you, including somebody from the past who's no longer with us, which could be an interesting companion. What does the ultimate drive look like for you?
So I thought about this for a little bit, and I asked myself, what would that look like? And who would I want to sit in a car for that long, right? And I think at this point, I've spent the last 6 years building a business, and if I have a regret out of that, it is the time it took away from my family.
Oh yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, so I have 2 young boys, 9 and 8-year-old, and they're full of life. And I think what I would do is I would grab the boys and we would head off, maybe do something in Europe. I had some friends travel from Italy up to Monaco recently. That sounds like that would be a really great trip. I think I would grab a Vanagon or something like that. And just go just camp, and we'll just enjoy our time together and the experiences, right?
Yeah, you tug on my heartstrings here because I went through the whole thing. I'm much older than you, could maybe even be your dad. And when I look back at your life and go, what would I have done differently? And there's a lot of things, of course, but that is one thing. I mean, you spent so much time at work. Working. And that's part of why I started this podcast. Now my kids have grown and now I've got 2 grandchildren. So there you go. And how can I spend time with them? And, what did I miss out on? And you start to realize what's really important. And that's part of also growing and changing your business. So it can allow you to do more of those kind of things. Because if one thing I've learned is by the time your kids get to be in the teenage years and beyond, it's not over, but they're gone. I mean, they're onto their own lives. That's just, they should do that, right? You don't want them living in your basement the rest of their lives. It's not good for them nor you. But right. So that sounds like a wonderful, wonderful trip. And, I'm not sure if we talked about this before, but is there been, maybe since we last spoke, a special vehicle in your life that stands out?
No.
No, you've been too busy building your brand.
Yeah. It's it's funny because I have 65 cars, right? And while they're not mine, I care for them like they are, right?
Yeah.
And there have been cars that have come and gone. There hasn't been really anything necessarily that stuck out with me too much. So let's check back on that.
Yeah. Okay. Next time we'll have you come back. We'll talk about, something special in your garage.
And Mark, I'd love to let all the listeners know one of the goals that I have is that folks anywhere in the U.S. or wherever they may be, if they do plan on coming to Charleston, to absolutely put Elliott Remington Auto Studio on your list of things to do. We're getting ready to move into a 27,000 square foot facility that is going to house storage and detailing and dry ice. We'll have a 3,000 square foot lounge with a coffee bar and working area. So it's going to be a really, really fun place, very unique to come and enjoy. And it would be great to meet some people out and about on their travels.
Well, before I let you go, and I want to thank you for coming back and showing, and I'm just so proud of you of how you've expanded and scaled your business and what you've done. I love having guests back that have grown, aren't in the same place. That's what life's all about, is growing and evolving and doing more things. Could you share maybe some words of inspiration for our listeners out there?
The last time we spoke, you had asked me about a quote, and it still rings true. It is Irish Gaelic, and it says, Chucky Arla, which means our day will come. And I think it's so relevant, and it's still here. And with all the growth that we've experienced, our day is still on the way, right? There's still more to do. And, and I think that's important as well as and I think with anything, life in general, but in business, especially when you're first starting, it can be very dark.
Oh, yeah. You feel very lonely sometimes. It's like, I'm the only one here. Even if you have a team around you. If you own the business, there's so much weight on your shoulders.
And lonely was the exact word that I was ready to drop there, right? And I think it's true. So, having that sort of motivation and knowing like it's fine, you'll get through it, our day will come. I don't know. It just reads to me.
It's great. I remember that now. Most definitely. How can people learn more about Elliott Remington Auto Studio?
Obviously, visit ElliottRemington.com. ELLIOT, and it's Remington, just like the gun company or the shaver. Or we're on Instagram and Facebook, Elliott Remington Auto Studio, all one word. And of course, reach out to us, hello@ElliottRemington.com.
Yeah, I'll put all those links on Ryan's show notes page. Check him out. And if you missed my first talk with him, go back and listen to that too. Sometimes it's fun to listen to a past guest show and a current guest show and see how things have evolved. And I think it gives listeners inspiration that, things shouldn't stay the same. You should always be growing and evolving and pushing yourself to the limits. Yeah, it can be a challenge sometimes, but at the end, I think you'll be very happy with it. And I want to do a shout out thank you to listener Doug Coop, who brought you back on the show. Doug, thank you for pushing Ryan back on the show today. I think that's pretty darn cool. Thanks for being so generous with your time. Really proud of what you've built and done. Can't wait to see what the future holds. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you maybe on a camping trip in Europe with your sons. That would be cool. Down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome. This was great.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.